So this video is going to be looking at the Vlookup function, and a part of what I'm going to start with is a little bit of just background on what the function is doing. I think that will help to remove some of the mystery behind the syntax and the way the function is executed in Excel. Now, this is going to be an example that's clearly a lot simpler than the application and the potential applications that you can use this for. But let's look at this. There is this database here that has a list of the state that teams are from and the number of schools, followed by the region for a particular tournament that they are casted in. Now, if you wanted to know for Alabama what was their region, you could go through this list and you would see Alabama is southeast, and you could go ahead and type southeast here. Florida is northwest, you could go ahead and type northwest here. Now, that's a manual way of doing it. If we had 5,000 different team states, or this number got crazy based on the database, then doing that manually would become a little bit of a nightmare. So the function I'm going to show you is one way you can do it relatively easily. The lookup function, in a nutshell, what it is doing, you are going to tell Excel, okay, I am interested in finding if Alabama is in this table. So this yellow cell, is it present in this table? And in searching this table, I'm going to tell it to search just the first column. So really, we are going to be looking for Alabama to be in one of these cells here, because that's the way the lookup function works. So you have to know which column the thing that you are hunting for is going to exist in. And then also, when it finds Alabama, there are several things. Well, in this case, just two associated data points with Alabama. You can choose which of these two do you want Excel to report here. Now, let's look at it real quick, and some of what I just said will make sense. The syntax of the function is going to be, let me copy this here and paste it on the blank cell so as not to distract. The syntax of the function, it asks for a lookup value. So what do you want Excel to go hunting for? And as I said, it has to be in the first column of the data that you're telling Excel to look among. And that data is called a table array, which is going to be your second argument. The third argument is going to be, okay, Excel has found Alabama. Alabama is right there. Which of these two values do you want Excel to report in this cell here? Right? So the real syntax of it is Vlookup, the lookup value. We're searching for Alabama. Where are we searching for it? In all of these cells in this area, which is called the table array. And we want to report the region, which is going to be this value here. So it will make more sense in a moment. Let's see. So we're going to go Vlookup. And the first thing we are wanting to be able to, let me get this a little smaller so that everything shows. As I said, the first argument is, okay, Excel, what are you going to look up? I want you to look up the value in this cell. So I click on that, put a comma. Then you're going to tell Excel the table array. Where is the data set that we are going to be looking into to get our results? And it's going to be from this all the way down, and we highlight the whole data set. And it may have multiple columns, but importantly, the value we're looking up must be in the first column that you highlight for the table array. That's super important, or you're not going to get any accurate results if you don't get an error. Then the next thing you're going to tell Excel is, okay, once you found Alabama, what data associated with that am I looking for? Is it the number of schools or the region? We want to find the region. Excel isn't going to allow you to input region. It's going to say, in this table array, which is this section here in the green box, which column number do you want it to report? And we want it to report the region, which is going to be the third column. So this is going to be the number 3. And you always, at least not always, but in this case and many cases, you will put a false, which will tell Excel that, hey, I am looking for an exact match and not the closest. So let's just assume that that's always what we want. So we're always going to use a false. You hit enter and it pops out southeast. So let's look back at what it's doing so that you can apply this to the assignment with a great understanding. The lookup function is telling Excel, hey, Excel, go and look for the value in E2, which in this case is Alabama. Where am I looking? I'm looking between cells A2 and A9, which is this range here. And once I have found it, I am reporting the value in the third column of this region, right? Which is right here. All of this region, we're looking for Alabama and reporting the third column. So you will see it comes up with a southeast. If I wanted to do the same for Florida, what I would need to do is the same Vlookup, Florida. I'm entering the range and I'm telling Excel that I want to report the value in the region, which is the third column of that range. And obviously we're looking for an exact match. So that comes up with Northwest. Now, am I going to do this for all the cells? And in this case, it's only 8. But if it were a lot more, I wouldn't want to sit there and type the function. So I can do an automatic fill. And this is where I'm going to do it. And I'm going to get an error. And I'll show you why I got the error in a moment. And I'm going to copy this formula here, getting the fill handle and copying it all the way down. So that Excel is going to give me, for this, it's looking for E4, which is Georgia. It's looking in A3 to C10, which if you take a detailed look at it, you notice when I copy this all the way down, what it does is it increments the E3, and that becomes E4, so it's searching for Georgia here. And then it goes to E5, so it's searching for Maryland. But it's also incrementing the table array, the area in which we're looking up the value. But I always wanted to look up the value in A2 to C9, because this is always the table. This isn't changing regardless of which of these it's looking for. So by the time it gets to here, it's looking up the value in A7 to C14, which is all the way down here. So it's missing a lot of the data. So what we're going to do in this cell, we want this to remain the same when we use the autofill. So you can either type it first and then highlight it and hit F4, which introduces the $sign in front of the cell and the column and row. So it's a $A, a $2, and it goes all the way to a $C and a $9. Doesn't make a difference to this value, but when you copy this down, let's look at what happens here. And I'm going to leave one incorrect so you can see the difference. When you go to here, it's still keeping this region fixed because the data source that is looking up the value in does not change. So we want this to be the same. So the $signs here is what we call absolute values, absolute references, and it keeps it from incrementing because we do want this to go from E2 down to E3 when we're looking for this. When we're looking for Georgia, we want it to go to E4. So we want this to increment. So we leave that as a non-absolute value. But here we want it to always look up in A2 to C9. And if you notice here, the one that I didn't copy the correct formula, it would have incremented down from A2 to C2, to C9. And it's now looking between A8 to C15 because it's incrementing that. But if I copy this formula, which locks those values, look at what's going to happen. It's now going to be looking at the locked cell range from A2 to C9. So that's a common mistake. So a couple common mistakes that are made here is not locking the cells, as well as this value here where you're telling Excel which column from the region where the data is do I want you to report as the response that I need. If I wanted to get this to not be region but to tell me the number of schools, what adjustment would I make to this? I would still want it to look for E2. I would still want it to look in the same range, but instead of reporting the third column, which is region, I now want it to report the second column, which is number of schools. And it gives me a 55 for Alabama, which is here. And if I copy this down, and I'm going to do it for all but one, it's going to give me the number of schools. Because this is saying report the value in the second column, which is number of schools. Here it's saying report the value in the third column. So if you understand what these arguments are, then you can construct your VLOOKUP function to do exactly what you want. Alright, so I'm hoping that this helps. It's been a little long. I was hoping it would be about 10 minutes. But I think it helps to just sort of put some rationale behind the syntax so that you can then translate that to the problem that you are going to be using the VLOOKUP function to address. And again, the power of this is if we had 10,000 data points in this cell, we could copy this fill handle and it would do that in a mouse click as opposed to manually entering it. This situation is super simple, but the VLOOKUP function is best taught using a simple example, and then you can go apply the same principles and you'll be on your way. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself or any of the other tutors. We'll be more than happy to help. Alright, thank you so much.